What's going on, guys? B. Scott here with you, and on today's show, we got your waiver wire heading in to the playoff week. Week number 15. It's finally here. We're going to be talking about some waiver wire players, guys that you should be probably picking up, and some potential starters. Especially this week, I like to focus on 1 week starters, guys that you're going to be plugging and playing that you're going to need. Because honestly, you need to win this week to get to the championship. So keep it locked and loaded right here at the first 4 downs. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back. As I mentioned in the preview, we're going through the waiver wire ahead of week 15. I like to mention a few players at each position that should hopefully bolster your rosters and get you over that playoff hump. I mean, obviously, it's a must-win game this week. You know how the playoffs work. You got to win to get to the championship. So we're looking at players. I like to focus on winning now. Winning this week, it's the most important week. So before we get to today's content, don't forget, like the video, subscribe, share, thumb bell, and then comment. If there's a player I don't mention, because I'm not going to mention every single player. I don't have that many here. Drop in the comment section. I'll be glad to give you my advice and my opinion, whether you should pick them up or whether I like them in their outlook this week and potentially further down the line. So let's start at the top with the quarterback position. A couple quarterbacks I like. First off, Tua this week. Faced the New York Jets, coming back from bye. He's 33% owned in Yahoo leagues. He's averaged 250 passing yards over his last 3 games. 5 touchdowns, just 1 interception. And he played these New York Jets just a few weeks ago. 273 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, and an interception. So I like the outlook there. Could be down some running backs. Myles Gaskin on the COVID list. We'll have to see if he's back and healthy to go. But I think Tua's just a great spot start here. He's been very effective on the season. And the New York Jets have allowed the fifth most fantasy points at the quarterback position. The defense on the road this season has allowed 31 points per game on average. So I think Miami will be just fine scoring the football. I like Tua, a good spot start, especially this week if you really need one at the quarterback position. Jimmy Garoppolo. Now he's facing the Atlanta Falcons. He's been good. I mean, 296 passing yards, 2 touchdowns just yesterday against Cincinnati Bengals. Played well. He's been playing pretty well, albeit he had a few turnovers the last couple weeks, but he's been getting it done. Two touchdowns in 6 of his last 7 games. 3 straight games over 230 passing yards. Back-to-back games in which he's almost touched the 300-yard mark. And he's playing the Atlanta Falcons. It's a great spot here. Second most fantasy points to the quarterback position. The second most touchdowns on the season. I want to say 26 through the air. So Jimmy Garoppolo, down the stretch, could win you your fantasy championship if you got there to the playoffs and you didn't draft a quarterback, or you waited, or whatever situation you were in, and you ended up streaming quarterbacks on a weekly basis. Jimmy Garoppolo is your man. He's at the Atlanta Falcons. Then he's at the Tennessee Titans. They give up the most fantasy points through that secondary, so I like that too. And then he's got the Houston Texans. That's just the easy schedule down this stretch for the San Francisco 49ers. And if their running backs are once again hurt, you see Jeff Wilson just doesn't have any juice. He doesn't. So Deebo Samuel is great out of the backfield, but Kittle's starting to come on strong. Brandon Ayuk's playing very well. A couple of those receivers are finally starting to round into form. So Jimmy Garoppolo is a great option, especially this week, owning 30% of Yahoo leagues. So at the Atlanta Falcons, I'd be firing him here for sure. He's a must start. Now, Justin Fields, my last quarterback to mention. Played okay in spots. Honestly, the wide receivers did all the work yesterday and made Justin Fields look good. He did have 70 yards on the ground rushing. That's good. That means he's finally getting comfortable running the ball. That's great. That's what we want to see in a mobile quarterback like that. And if he's able to get a floor of 50 to 60 rushing yards, then he's a viable starter every single week, even if he plays bad. Now, he had a good first half of football, and like I mentioned, the wide receivers made the plays. 2 big bomb touchdowns in which the wide receivers took crossing routes to the house on the Green Bay Packers. Honestly, put up 27 points. That game was over before the half. Over the total over-under score of 43. So that was pretty crazy. And then Green Bay ends up scoring 45 points, covering the over themselves. But Justin Fields, he faced the Minnesota Vikings. Minnesota, giving up 4th most fantasy points to the quarterback position. They've allowed 3+ touchdowns to quarterbacks in 4 of their last 6 games. You saw what they did. Ben Roethlisberger coming back in that game last week. So Justin Fields is a good, viable start. Now, yes, you got to worry. He is a rookie. He does make a lot of mistakes. So can you trust him in the fantasy playoffs? I understand if you don't want to, but if you're really reeling at the quarterback position, Justin Fields is a great option, I think. 224 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions against the Green Bay Packers last night. Like I mentioned, he had 70 yards on the ground. And Minnesota allowing 5.6 yards per carry to quarterbacks on the season. So it's a good matchup. And then down the stretch, Justin Fields, Minnesota Vikings, at the Seattle Seahawks. That defense has played okay in spots, but still kind of struggling. And then the New York Giants have fallen apart altogether. So that's pretty good strength schedule for Justin Fields if you need him in the playoffs. And then we got to get to some running backs. First off, it's Rashad Penny. He's got to be the hottest commodity. He broke off 2 big touchdown runs, 16 carries, 137 yards, 2 touchdowns. I had all the Seattle Seahawks running backs as sits this week just because I didn't like the outlook. Who knows what was going to happen in that situation? And guess what? Rashad Penny comes out and balls out. Now, yes, we've been waiting for Rashad Penny for years to be fully healthy and see what his potential could be. If he runs like that, you got to be starting him in an offense in which it thrives on play action pass, especially with Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf. Got to get DK going. I don't know what's going on there, but look, Rashad Penny, 16 carries, 137 yards, 2 touchdowns. The LA Rams have allowed a touchdown on the ground to a running back, or Deebo Samuel. I'll call him pretty much a running back because he got it on the ground in that game. 7 straight games. The Los Angeles Rams giving up a touchdown to a running back, whether it was through the air or on the ground. So I like the outlook of Rashad Penny here. Alex Collins has finally fallen off his production. 7 carries for 16 yards. That's what he finished with. So I think Rashad Penny's just going to carry a big enough load down the stretch that you're going to want to get him in your lineups. He's at the Los Angeles Rams, like I mentioned. Good spot to see, 12 to 15 carries here, and hopefully he can run effective like he did last week. Then he's got the Chicago Bears and the Detroit Lions both at home. Not defenses I'm really, really scared of. So Rashad Penny, I think down the stretch could be a viable RB2 option heading into the championships if you need it as a good RB2 option or a flex. So then we can talk about some Eagles running backs. I just like the outlook of all these running backs. Washington football team, New York Giants at Washington football team. It's a decent schedule. Washington's been okay against running backs, but the Eagles are so run heavy. And most of them are on the waiver wire right now based on injuries and things like that, and of course the bye. So now, I'm not telling you to run out and pick up all these running backs, but we need to wait and see what the injury reports look like. Jordan Howard missing time. Boston Scott was ill. He should be fine. Kenneth Gainwell, you've seen what he can do if he's given enough workload. And then Miles Sanders. So we just got to watch the injury reports here this week. That's why I'm mentioning these guys. I'm not necessarily saying to pick them up, but these are viable guys. If 1 or 2 of these guys were to miss, I like the other 1 or 2 as potential starters this week. So you got to monitor the Eagles running backs this week. And then Dearness Johnson, I like the outlook. The guy's explosive. He's made some great plays. Kareem Hunt is injured again, looking to go have an MRI, I think, on his ankle. If he were to miss time, 1, Dearness Johnson is Chubb's insurance, so that's good. And we've seen what kind of workload he can handle and what he's done effective. And this week, playing the Las Vegas Raiders, that team is falling apart altogether. I don't know what's going on with Las Vegas. They got embarrassed in Kansas City yesterday by the largest of margins, 48-7, I want to say. The end of that score was just an embarrassing loss in Las Vegas. It's time to just rack it up, pack it up, and head on to the next season because it's not looking good from here on out. Las Vegas Raiders, 3rd most fantasy points to the running back position. 6 receiving touchdowns they've given up to running backs. That's 2nd most in the league. So Dearness Johnson, I think if Kareem Hunt were to miss some time, I like him as a potential, honestly, a good flex option, especially this week. And they're at the Green Bay Packers, at the Pittsburgh Steelers. Not necessarily daunting defenses, but like I mentioned, if Kareem Hunt was out, I think Dearness Johnson could be a solid flex option down the stretch. And then I'm going to talk about Craig Reynolds, obviously for the Detroit Lions. I have IDK because I really don't know. 11 carries for 83 yards. Jamar Jefferson was potentially supposed to start last week. He missed some practice time, ended up not playing in the game. And they're at the Arizona Cardinals. I'm just mentioning this. It's not somebody I would like to pick up at all because they do have a couple decent matchups after Arizona this next week. But by then, Jamal Williams should more than likely be back. DeAndre Swift might end up coming back at some point this season. So I don't like the outlook of the Detroit Lions running backs right now just because there's too many question marks. And then Justin Jackson on the Los Angeles Chargers. Austin Eckler, injured. We'll have to see if he is going to miss some time. If he ends up missing, I like Justin Jackson as the best option in that backfield to carry most of the load, even though it'll be a mix and match. So, and then Phillip Lindsay, I'm going to mention him. Probably no one's going to talk about him, but Myles Gaskin's on COVID. And if Myles Gaskin were to miss the game, I'm not sure, how that's going to shake out. But if he were to miss, let's say he misses. They're facing the New York Jets. They give up the most fantasy points to running backs by far, not even close. So Phillip Lindsay honestly would be a plug and play RB2 in my opinion if Myles Gaskin were to miss the game. So let's get to some wide receivers. Wide receivers that I like this week. First off, Davante Parker of the Miami Dolphins. He's coming off a bye, 45% owned. He's at the New York Jets. Or no, they're at home to the New York Jets. Then they got the Saints and the Tennessee Titans. Both those secondaries have really fallen off a little bit. The Jets haven't given up a ton of fantasy points to wide receivers, but they've just been beaten so bad on the ground, teams just don't throw it at them. So I like the upside of Davante Parker. 7+ targets in 5 of 6 games. He's cleared 40 yards in every single game with 4+ receptions. So that's a pretty safe floor of 8 to 10 fantasy points in full PPR leagues. and his upside is huge. So Davante Parker is my number one wide receiver waiver ad. Considering down the stretch, he could be a viable wide receiver 3 or flex type option that could potentially put up wide receiver 2 numbers. We've seen the talent. We know he can do it. Then we got KJ Osborn. I talked about him last week. I liked him as a huge pickup. I like him still, 38% owned. Back-to-back weeks with a touchdown, 7+ targets in back-to-back weeks without Adam Thielen. And the Chicago Bears, a great matchup. 4th most fantasy points to the wide receiver position. Coming off a game in which he had 9 targets. Just caught 3 of them, 83 yards and touchdown. You see the big playability. And Thielen dealing with a high ankle sprain. Now, I'm not sitting here. I'm no doctor. I have no clue whether he's going to play this week or not. But anything considering a high ankle typically runs at least a couple weeks. So we'll have to wait and see if Thielen's even able to go. But if he isn't, once again, I like KJ Osborn as a solid wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3 option this week. Amon-Ra St. Brown. I'm just going to mention him. I don't love the Detroit Lions players' outlooks. I had him as sits last week just because there was too many question marks and they were facing the Denver Broncos. And, of course, what does Amon-Ra St. Brown do? He soaks up all the Hawkinson targets, so he gets 12 targets. Back-to-back games. I mean, hey, if you got a wide receiver that's getting 12 targets, that's a potential start every single week. 8 catches for 73 yards, full PPR. That's some decent, solid flex-type value. So I'm going to mention him. At the Arizona Cardinals, then he's got the Atlanta Falcons and the Seattle Seahawks. The back-to-back matchups on the back end I like, but Hawkinson could be back there, and who knows what's going to happen with, Reynolds has kind of emerged as a decent target on the outside. So I don't love the outlook here for Amon-Ra St. Brown, but I'm going to mention him because he's got so many targets. It's hard to not talk about a guy that's being a target hog, plain and simple. Jakeem Grant Sr., on the flip side of that, not a target hog. He's at the Minnesota Vikings. They give up the most fantasy points to wide receivers on the season. Back-to-back games with a touchdown. Just 3 targets, but he had the 1 catch that he took to the house for 46 yards. He's an explosive wide receiver that doesn't need a lot of volume to make big plays. You saw it with the return touchdown. 97-yard punt return touchdown. First one of the NFL season. That's crazy to think about. But I just think if you were going to take a chance in a league and you needed to take a dart throw, he could be an option this week just based on his big playability and the Minnesota secondary being so poor. I know that Allen Robinson's back, but he isn't playing very well. He's still banged up with injuries. It doesn't look like he wants to play for Chicago anyway. So I think Jakeem Grant Sr., not saying you're going to throw him in your lineup and you love it, but if you needed to take a chance on a boom-bust player this week, I really like his outlook, especially this week. So that's why I got to mention him for the wide receiver position. Now on to a couple defenses. Guys that I think you should be streaming. Miami defense. They're owned in only 48% of leagues. I don't know why. They've been destroying teams over the last month and a half of football. And now they face the New York Jets. Smash spot here to finish as a top 5 defense. Miami, you got to get them and start them in your lineups. Plain and simple. Cleveland Browns, only owned in, 3% of leagues. They've been up and down this season, but they're playing the Las Vegas Raiders. Raiders have completely fallen off a cliff. I don't know what's going on. And the pass rush for Cleveland's playing very well. So give me the Cleveland Browns defense as a good start option this week. So that's it. That's been my waiver wire for week 15. Heading into this week, obviously we got the Monday Night Football game between the Rams and the Arizona Cardinals, so we'll see how that shakes out. But this is the early waiver wire. We got to start looking at the playoffs and making these smart decisions. You got to get the W's heading in, especially this week. That's the most important one. If you want to get to the championship, you got to win this week. It's must win. So if you have any questions about any player or anything fantasy related, drop in the comment section. I'll be glad to give you my advice and my opinions. And while you're there, don't forget to like the video, subscribe, share, thumb bell, all the way up to your championships. We'll have all your information. You can ask any questions at any time. I answer all of them. So for the first 4 downs, it's been B. Scott, and I'm out.